All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining to learn a little bit more about sustainable oceans and seafood sustainability. I'm Mel, and I'm passionate about helping companies prioritize people and planet positive strategies in their supply chain. I also believe in inclusivity, and to me, that means making sustainability accessible and understandable for all. Today, I am joined by Adriana Sanchez, who is the founder of Seafood Ninja, and she is an expert on seafood sustainability and passionate about protecting our oceans. For those of you that don't know, June 8th is World Oceans Day. And with that, it is really important to think about the importance of oceans and how to have sustainable seafood impact. So, Adriana, do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Well, good morning, and thank you, Mel, for inviting me to participate in this quick interview. I'm Adriana Sanchez. I founded Seafood Ninja, which helps companies, mainly importers and distributors, work towards improving their sourcing best practices around their supply chain. So I work with NGOs and different stakeholders within the supply chain to make sure that the seafood that we're importing to the US and actually ending at the consumer level, it's coming from responsible sources.
Wow. And so if you're helping those retailers and distributors with sourcing, what does that mean for me as a seafood shopper?
I think it's important that we recognize that all of our local stores are working towards improving their sourcing by checking out like their websites, looking at their commitments around, not only seafood sustainability, but in general, they also have climate strategies and also, waste management and see how that aligns with our values. When we go to a store, we can look for, products that are certified. So we can look for eco certifications, the logos like Fair Trade, MSC, BAP, ASC. And that's like one of the easiest ways to spot what it meets our responsible commitment. And also looking at signage, a lot of the retailers are getting better at communicating where their products are coming from, understanding that consumers want to understand, where the seafood they're buying from is harvested at what level.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that thinking about different labels that could help shoppers know that the seafood that they're purchasing might be sourced a little bit more sustainably is definitely a great tip for those that are looking to purchase more sustainable seafood. Yeah, and you mentioned that a lot of these retailers or partners have climate commitments or other kinds of commitments. You probably know this, but did you know that oceans are one of the largest carbon sinks?
Yes, that's why it's so important that we make best choices about how we buy our seafood.
It absolutely is. Yeah, so I think it's super interesting that the ocean accumulates 20 to 35% of atmospheric carbon dioxide. And that's why there's a term called blue carbon, which is basically any carbon that's stored in a coastal or ocean ecosystem. And when we think about blue carbon, it's actually somewhat more powerful than when we think about trees or stuff that's on land, because when stuff sinks to the bottom of the ocean, it's not going anywhere. And so that's a long-term carbon sink compared to if we have it in a tree and then we cut that tree down, it actually would then re-release the carbon. So that's a really exciting thing to think about when we're thinking about the extra CO2 that we're seeing in our atmosphere. Um, Another thing that I'm curious about is oftentimes we think about eating the top three kinds of seafood, and there's a lot of concentration of how people are consuming. I'm curious if you have any tips as it relates to sustainable seafood of what people might be able to do to eat, not just with labels in mind, but what kind of seafood they could actually think about eating to help balance out the things that they're eating.
That's a really great question. I think we focus on much on like the top, like tuna or salmon or shrimp, but the variety of seafood is so extensive. I think we should venture more on like lesser known species, which help, release some of that pressure on overfished fisheries. Also looking at bivalves, eating more oysters, mussels, which are great for your health and also great for the ocean because they help us what do you call it,
So
filtration systems, and
yeah.
also like carbon that helps sequester carbon. So it's another good way of kind of improving not only our diet but also helping our oceans and the world as we know it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that that bottom of the food chain really has an awesome impact. And I think it's important to keep in mind that as we think of the ocean as a big carbon sink, that carbon is leading to challenges with things like mollusks or things that have calcified shells, because as there's more CO2 in the ocean, they're actually having trouble forming those shells. But if we think about balancing out the food chain and making sure that there isn't a huge disruption, there's predators and the things that they eat and making sure there's that balance, it can go a long way. I was super interested to learn that phytoplankton is actually one of the main reasons that the ocean itself is such a good carbon sink. And these microorganisms that really feast off of things like poop, so all fishes do that, can capture a lot of CO2, but they also release a lot of the oxygen that we're breathing on Earth. And when the phytoplankton die, they sink to the bottom of the ocean. And otherwise, they are also sinking to the bottom as animals poop because they're being eaten. And then so it's this cycle, and that's really exciting. And there's a lot that can be done to kind of help, support their existence. And that can be things like seaweed and other kinds of algae and all of the kind of in water aquatic plants and stuff like that. Are there anything else that you think that we should consider when we're talking about ocean sustainability before we sign off for the day?
Well, I think like when though you were mentioning about seaweed, right? Like seaweed and kelp is growing as an industry. So looking at diversifying snacks, which can also be healthy for you and help the planet. Also, a lot of kelp, it's used in the beverage industry. So that also helps with kind of creating that production. I think in terms of sustainability, as consumers, we need to know that we can vote with our dollar and our purchases matter. And the more we think about responsible seafood sourcing or any other product that you're looking at the market and ask these questions, it leads retailers and food service to push down these requirements or create policies around better food systems. And then that helps the planet as a whole. So I think that, a lot of people say, oh, people don't care. But I think we see an increasing generation that cares about the planet, wants to know where the seafood's coming from. Most importantly, realizes that food production systems are about people, and there's people behind the food that we eat, the harvest at the harvest level. And I think that if we humanize food system productions, we can really connect with how our purchases matter, and it helps sustain the livelihoods of billions of people in the world.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And I think it's so important to think about the livelihoods and the dependence. So it's not just us as the consumers that are going to eat sustainable seafood, but it's the whole supply chain that helped to get that seafood to our store, or really any other, agricultural commodity or commodity in general. And I think it's that intersection of human impact from an environmental impact that we really have to keep in mind, that we have, just one planet and we're each here to live our lives to their fullest. But I also think it's super interesting to end on saying that we do each have a voice, and we should really, advocate for what we want. I know, like 2 years ago, we would go to the store and we wouldn't see any kind of seaweed, innovation. And now you go in and there's seaweed chips and all these different things, or different kinds of, clam or mollusks that maybe we wouldn't have talked about. But now that there's been demand for them, there's a lot more availability. And I think that that's really exciting. But yeah, I really thank you for the conversation today. I hope that everyone understands a little bit more about seafood and ocean sustainability, and that sustainability doesn't have to be complex. I'm really excited to think about how we can each have an impact and be sustainability advocates. And hopefully we can keep sustainability cool and comfortable for all of us. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.